Good afternoon, students. Today we shall be looking at the subject biology, and the topic before us is ecology. Before we continue this subject, let us look at some of the objectives in this topic. The first one says, at the end of this class, everyone should be able to define what ecology is. Number 2, everyone should be able to explain the types or the branches of ecology with examples. Number 3, everyone should be able to enumerate or mention the type of ecological concepts. 4, name the ecological factors common to living and non-living. And the last one, everyone should be able to explain some of the common ecological measuring instruments. So get your writing material, sit back. So welcome back to class. Ecology is the study of relationship between living organisms and their environment. It forms the basis of understanding agriculture, forestry, and fishery. That is the study of living organisms, plants and animals, in relationship with the environment, how they interact with the environment. In short, ecology is a branch of biology that deal with how organisms interact with each other and with their environment. You can see plants, animal, there's a relationship between plant and animal. For instance, green plant produces food for animals to eat. The same animal produces carbon dioxide as waste product for plant to manufacture their food. You can see this interrelationship between them. And then they all depend on water. They all depend on environmental factors such as temperature, water, humidity for them to live. So all these factors interacting with each other is what we mean by ecology. All right, let's move on. We have branches of ecology. There are basically 2 branches of ecology. The first one is called ecology. Ecology is the study of a single organism or species and its environment. When you are trying to study a particular organism, take for instance, you are studying a particular bird on a particular tree, or you are trying to look at a lizard, just an organism, a lizard in a particular environment, that is called ecology. The study of a single organism or species and its environment. Example is a rat in its habitat, tilapia in a stream, or a student in a school setting. If you are studying the activities of a particular student in a given environment, or you are looking at a rat, how is this rat interacting with its environment? That is, where does this rat get its food from? Where does it relate with its food? How does it relate with the environment in terms of feeding, in terms of waste product? This is just a particular individual organism in the environment, so it is called ecology. But synecology is the study of interaction among different species. It involves 2 or more species. This time around, you are talking about the rats. At the same time, you are talking about the lizard. You are talking about the plant. You are talking about the soil. So interacting with one another, they involve 2 or more organisms living together in a specific environment. Example is a river ecosystem with fish. We have a river, which is the environment, which consists the fish, seaweed, and crab. You can see 3 organisms are here in a particular environment, which is the river. So when you study the interrelationship between the fish, how did they depend on the seaweed and the crab? The situation or the condition or this branch of ecology is what we mean by synecology. All right? Now, ecological concept. When we say ecological concept, we mean what are the terms or what are the words common in ecology? You hear environment. You hear the word like environment. What is environment? This includes all the factors, both external and internal, living or non-living, that affect an organism or group of organisms. The environment constitutes the living and non-living. For instance, the soil, the rock, the water, the temperature, all these things makes up the environment, which affects the living organism. It consists of the habitat. Habitat is a place where organisms live with peculiar physical conditions such as light, food, water, air. The animal preying on other animals or diseases affecting this organism. So diseases in that environment, predators, water, air, soil, rock, plants, they all interact. They all work together in an environment depending on the particular organism present there. Number 2, we call it biosphere or ecosphere. Bio from the word bio, life. That is those environments where living organisms can only survive. This is a zone of the earth occupied by living organisms. Only living organisms are found here in the biosphere. It's a narrow zone where complex biological and chemical activities occur. It can be found on the land, water, and air. Biosphere are areas or sections of the earth where only life thrives. And it can be on the land. We have some animals on the land. We have some animals on the soil. It could be animal, it could be plants. Then we have some that lives on water. Plant lives on water, they live on land, even on air. So all this constitute what we mean by the biosphere. Biosphere provide habitat for organisms like animals, plants, and microorganisms. The ecosphere consists of 3 major parts. Ecosphere can be divided into 3 major parts because these parts we can find both plants and animals, even microorganisms living together. All right. The second concept here is biosphere, otherwise known as ecosphere. It is an area on the earth where living things occur, where living things thrive. It's occupied. This is a zone of the earth occupied by living organisms. It's a narrow zone where complex biological and chemical activities occur. It can be found on land, water, and air. Like we said, biosphere are areas where only living organisms are found. When we say living organisms, it can be microorganisms, it can be plants, it can be animals. They can be found on land. We have plants on land. We have living organisms on land, microorganisms on land. Then we have animals on land, on water, and even on air. In air. Sorry. Okay. The second concept here is called biosphere. Bio means life, meaning only life occur in this area. It's an area where we find living organisms. And when we say living organisms, we mean plants, animal, and microorganisms. They occur in this area of the earth. So these organisms can be found on land. They can be found on the soil, in water, even in the air. It provides a habitat for organisms like animals, plants, and microorganisms. The ecosphere consists of 3 major parts. Yes, ecosphere can be divided into 3 major parts. We have lithosphere, hydrosphere, and then atmosphere. So the environment where life can be found can be either lithosphere. Lithosphere is a solid part, that is an area that is made up of solid. It can be soil, it can be rock, it can be mountain. The solid portion of the earth made up of rock and mineral, which form 30% of the earth crust. The only dry area on the surface of the earth where living organisms can be found is called lithosphere, and it's just about 30%. So meaning the remaining 70% is made up of water, which is called hydrosphere. hydrosphere. We've been told that the Earth crust is made up of 70% water and 30% land. You can imagine. So it tells you that the hydrosphere is the liquid part of the biosphere, meaning where we have the water body. It can be ocean, it can be river, it can be lake. That constitutes the hydrosphere. Then the last one is called the atmosphere. Atmosphere is an area of the earth where we have gases. They are made up of gases. They are gaseous part of the earth, composed mainly of nitrogen. The constituent of the air is nitrogen, which is 78%, because nitrogen makes the largest part of the atmosphere, 78%, followed by oxygen, which is 21%, and then carbon dioxide, which is 0.3%, then followed by noble gases. All these constitute what we mean by the atmosphere. So basically, the biosphere is made up can be classified into three: lithosphere, hydrosphere, and atmosphere. The following concept is habitat. Habitat is a place where living organisms live. It's a home where living organisms live. It's an environment in which organisms live naturally. We have different types of habitat. We have aquatic habitat, meaning organisms that are found in water. Organisms that live in water environment, like ocean, river, lake, and so on and so forth. So any organism that is found in water are called aquatic organisms. Then we have terrestrial habitat. Terrestrial habitats are organisms that live on land. They are environment where land harbors this living organism. Then we have the third one called arboreal habitat. Arboreal are organisms that live on trees. They make their environment, their home is on the streets, such as monkeys and birds. They are arboreal. Community or biotic community. When we say community, is the population of all living organisms that exist together in a habitat and interact with one another. All living organisms, be it plants, be it animal, be it microbes, interacting with one another, living together for interaction and benefit. This is called community. We call it community of organism, community of plants, community of an animal. Then the next one is biome. Biome is the largest community of organisms in a geographical area. When we have the largest community of organisms, we call it biome. And we can have example as rainforest, Guinea savanna, micro swamp, Sahel savanna, and so on and so forth. So these are basically the geographical area where living organisms share in the community. So then the next one is called ecological niche. Ecological niche is a portion of an area where an organism is found, is confined in. It defined as the specific portion of a habitat that is occupied by a particular species or organism, including its role in the ecosystem. When a particular organism occupies a particular area, for instance, you see bees, they occupied a certain area on the flower of a plant. They don't exceed that area. That area becomes their ecological niche. That particular area becomes their ecological niche. You can find some birds on a tree, monkeys on a tree, that particular area. So it's possible we have two organisms living together in different parts of a particular habitat. For instance, we can have bees on the flower, pollinating the flower. Then we can have monkeys on the branches of a particular tree. So all these organisms have their different niche or their different portion where they occupy as their as their ecological niche. The next one is population. When we say population, population is a term in ecosystem too that has to do with the total number of organisms, a specific organism living in a particular area. The total number of organisms of the same species. Mind you, the word species, the organism has to be of the same species. For instance, you can take a population of human beings in a particular community. You can take a population of birds in a particular land. You can take a population of lizard in a particular farmland. So that is the population, the total number of organisms living in a particular area at a specific time. The next one is ecological system or ecosystem. Ecosystem is defined as the community of plant and animal functioning together with their non-living environment. Ecosystem simply means the interaction between plants and animals in relationship with their non-living environment. So, ecosystem can be divided into two basic sections or parts. We have one, biotic and abiotic. Biotic simply means life. Biotic ecosystem are plants and animals are made up of living organisms which constitute plants and animals in their environment. While abiotic is simply non-living thing, non-living which constitute the non-living thing. So examples of biotic ecosystem is the producer. The producers are the green plant, meaning they produce. The green plant manufactured food through photosynthesis, so they are otherwise known as autotrophs. So they are made up of green plant because they are plants. Automatically, they are living things. So they constitute what we call the biotic. Then we have another section of the biotic, which is the consumer. The consumers are those animals. They are animals which feed directly on the green plants. So meaning animals don't produce their food, but they depend on what? The plants. They depend on autotroph in the process, otherwise known as heterotroph or heterotrophism. So these animals are called consumer because they consume what the producer produces. Then we have the last one called decomposer. They are also living organisms because they are made up of microorganisms that are ready to degrade or to cause the breaking down or decay of this living organism. They are microorganisms such as bacteria and fungi that are responsible for decay or decomposition of this organism. They are otherwise known as saprophytes. Then the non-living organisms are called, examples of non-living environment is soil. Of course, soil is not living. Water, temperature, humidity, and so on and so forth. Then the next concept we shall be talking about is seasonal migration. Migration means movement of organisms from place to place. Movement of animals for breeding, feeding, or avoiding harsh conditions. There are conditions that are too harsh for organisms in a particular area. They tend to move to other locations. For instance, let's look at cattle egrets, for instance. These birds are coming all the way from the north, probably because of the dry, harsh condition. They are now moving down to the south, where they can get some food and water for them to survive. So this movement from place to place is what we call seasonal migration because they do that in season. So, for instance, we see fish can migrate in such a way that muddy fish move between deep and shallow water. For instance, if fish want to lay their egg, they move from what? Deep to shallow water. Even in birds, such as cattle egret, like we said, they migrate seasonally in Nigeria. They move all the way from the north down to the south in search of food and safety. Yes? Next, let's look at some ecological factors common to all habitat. We say habitat is a place where living organisms find as a whole. So what are the factors that depends or that determine the existence or the flow of this organism in a particular area. Number one, temperature has an impact or effect on the plants, even on the animal living in a particular environment. When the temperature becomes too harsh, living organism will be affected. When the rainfall, another one is rainfall. When the rainfall is scarce, it will affect the activities of plant and animal in a particular habitat. Then we have light. Of course, light has to do with sunlight, meaning if the sunlight is poor, this is going to affect the photosynthesis of plants occurring in a particular area, which is automatically going to have the ripple effect on the animal. Because when the photosynthesis is poor, plants cannot produce its food, and animal will go on starvation. There will be no food for the animal. Then we have wind. Of course, we know the importance of wind. Wind can cause pollination, wind can cause erosion, wind can even cause rainfall. So the effect of this factor determines the existence or the interaction of both plant and animal in a particular environment. Then we have pressure. Pressure, of course, means the force in the air. Then we have temperature. Sorry. So the next one is ecological factors common to all habitats, meaning there are some factors that determine the relationship or the interaction of this organism in a particular environment. The first one is temperature. Temperature has an effect on the existence of living organisms. For instance, if the temperature is too high, it has a ripple effect on animals because they are not going to be, they won't be able to function well because the temperature has been increased. And if the temperature is too low, it also have an effect. There's a particular optimum temperature where a living organism can thrive. Another one is rainfall. Rainfall is also a factor. When the rainfall becomes too much, it's going to affect plants and animals. Plants may not be able to survive well, and the ripple effect is going to be on the animal because if the plant is not producing its intended food, it's going to affect the animal. It's going to cause starvation. And at the same time, too much rainfall can cause what we call erosion, which is going to affect agricultural activities or the existence of some animal in that environment. Then light. Light, of course, is coming from sunlight. Sunlight is responsible for photosynthesis, and photosynthesis will end up producing food for animals. So when the light is poor, photosynthesis will be poor. It's going to have an effect on the animal. Then wind. Wind is another factor. Wind causes erosion. Wind causes rainfall. In fact, rain causes pollination. So when rain or the wind is hindered or affected, it's going to have a ripple effect on both plant and animal. Then, of course, the last one being pressure. Pressure is a force in air. The amount of atmospheric pressure in a particular environment affects both plant and animal. Then the next one is of ecological factor. We said above that there are some factors that determine the ecology of a system, the ecology of an environment. So how do we measure these factors? What are the parameters put in place to measure these factors? The first one is altimeter. Altimeter is an instrument used to measure the altitude of a particular environment or ecology. Altimeter will measure the elevation or the altitude of a particular environment. Number two is photometer, otherwise known as light meter. This measures how bright the intensity of light in a particular environment. We can have, on a normal day, the sunlight can be bright, but on a rainy day or on a cloudy day, the sunlight will be poor. So the amount or the intensity of light can be measured through an instrument called photometer. The next one is hydrophotometer. Hydrophotometer simply means the amount of water content in air can be measured by what we call hydrophotometer. The amount of water content on air can be measured. The intensity of water can be measured by what we call hydrophotometer. Then we have handheld sonar. Handheld sonar is used to measure the amount of water depth, the depth of water in the soil. Then we have calorimeter. Calorimeter or pH meter will measure the level of acidity of the soil. The level of acidity or alkalinity of the soil. We use pH meter or calorimeter to determine that. Then we have the next one is hygrometer. Hygrometer measure the amount of humidity. Humidity simply means the amount of water in air. The amount of water suspended in air is called humidity. So it can be measured by an instrument called hygrometer or hygrometer or psychrometer. Psychrometer or hygrometer. Then the next one is thermometer. Of course, thermometer will measure the amount of temperature, that is the rise and fall of temperature in an environment is measured by what we call thermometer. Then the next one is anemometer. Anemometer is an ecological instrument used to measure the wind speed, that is the wind current, how the wind is able to, the speed of wind in an environment will be measured by what we call anemometer. Of course, the next one is the wind vane. Wind vane is different from anemometer because wind vane will measure the direction of wind. If the wind is moving toward the south or is moving toward the south or toward the north, will be determined by what we call the wind vane. Is to show a direction with a compass tilting towards the direction where the wind is blowing. The next one is rain gauge. Rain gauge will measure the amount of rainfall in a particular place. Then the last one is barometer. Barometer is a measuring instrument, ecological instrument to measure the atmospheric pressure of a place. It determines the atmospheric pressure of a place. Next is responses to abiotic factor. That is, how does living organism react or respond to non-living factors? When we say non-living factors, we measure above: rainfall, temperature, humidity, pressure, and so on. Number one, they migrate. Living things migrate. They move about from one place to the other. Some organisms temporarily move to area with more favorable environmental conditions. Like we said, cattle eagles move all the way from the north down south because the environment there is too hot for them, it's too harsh for them. So they have to move down to a particular environment where they are safe and they are secure. For example, birds migrate to a warmer region during winter and return when the condition improves. Number two, how does living organism conform to the environment? Certain organisms cannot regulate their internal temperature or osmotic balance. Instead, their body condition change with the external environment. These organisms are known as poikilothermic or ectothermic. There are some organisms that cannot react, they cannot relate with the environment. For instance, you have a fish that is accustomed to the water bodies in a cool environment. If you bring it outside, you find it difficult to relate. They cannot conform to that environment. They rather die. But you cannot compare that with human beings, which they can easily adapt or conform to the environment by some internal changes in their system. They are thereby creating an environment that makes their system to fit in to the new environment. Living organisms can suspend. How do you mean by suspend? Some organisms survive extreme conditions by entering a dormant state. They become passive. They become lifeless, so to speak. For instance, we talk about some organisms that are able to do this. We call them encystment. We call this process encystment, meaning they become passive all through the harsh condition. For instance, if you look at this giant snail, they form what we call, they have a sealant on their body surface during harsh condition. You understand? So thereby preventing the evaporation, because the entire environment is hot and there is no amount of water, so as to prevent water loss in their body. They form what we call a cyst on their surface during that harsh condition, and they are able to break up this seal when the environment is favorable during the rainy season. So some organisms survive extreme conditions by entering a dormant state. Cold-blooded animals may enter into hibernation during the cold period. We have seen that in lizards. Lizard, snakes, they are cold-blooded animals. On a cold day, they try to hibernate. They try to hide themselves. They try to go to a place that is warm for them. They hide themselves. They hibernate. They hide themselves because they are cold-blooded animals. They cannot be able to conform to the environment, which is harsh for them during cold period, or estivation during hot and dry period. Some bacteria form spore to withstand harsh environment. The last one is regulate. Living organisms are able to regulate their body. Other organisms maintain a stable internal environment despite external changes. These regulators include mammals. Mammals are built in such a way that they can control their internal environment. Bells can do that as well, because mammals are covered with skin. They have hair in their body. So also the bells, they have feathers. They can regulate the amount of heat flow exchange in their body and the environment. Some invertebrates and lower vertebrates can also do this. They use what's called thermal regulation and osmoregulation to preserve constant internal temperature and osmotic pressure. They are also called homeotherms or endotherms, or we call them homothermic because they have constant body temperature. They regulate this temperature based on the environment they find themselves. The next one is, next slide. So how does a particular organism interact with the environment? We say interaction among components of the ecosystem. How do plants and animals interact? Or how do plants and a fellow plant interact with one another? Or how do plants interact with non-living environment? Plants, that is the producer, use carbon dioxide, water, and sunlight. You can see plant is a living organism, and they use the non-living things such as carbon dioxide, water, and sunlight to capture what we call chlorophyll in the process called photosynthesis. You can see the relationship between living thing, which is plant, and the environment, which constitutes the carbon dioxide, water, and so on, to produce or to manufacture starch, to perform photosynthesis, producing carbohydrate like starch for animals to feed upon. Can you see that interaction? Animal also, which is consumer, feed on this plant and use the carbohydrate for energy, thereby releasing carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere for the plant. You can see the interaction. Why animal is feeding on this plant? They consume this carbohydrate. They ended up producing energy, and this energy releases carbon dioxide back into the environment. And when it gets to the environment, the plant captures them for photosynthesis to manufacture their food. The next one is decomposers, or we call them saprophytes. Decomposers, like microorganisms, break down dead plants and animals, releasing nutrients into the soil, which are then absorbed by plants to sustain their growth. Can you see? These plants and animals interact with the non-living environment to balance up the ecosystem. So decomposition is simply the breaking down of both plant and animal. They break them into simple nutrient that is good for the plant growth, thereby continuing the cycle, thereby continuing the interaction between the plant, animal, and the what? Decomposers. Components in the ecosystem that causes interaction between plant and animal is oxygen. Oxygen is produced during respiration of plants, and this oxygen is like a waste product, a byproduct, and as it's being released into the environment, the animal take it in. Animal take in oxygen to break down carbon dioxide, thereby releasing energy for the animal use. So, come to the end of the class, but please like, subscribe, and drop your comment at the comment section below. Thank you.
Hi, if you have not subscribed to this channel, you can do so in 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And don't forget to hit